Hello everyone, welcome to EduRev. In this session, I am going to introduce you with the flower, its parts and its some important functions. So let us begin with our chapter. During spring season, we see flowers blooming on the tree and it is a very beautiful sight. And we also see that flowers attract everyone and they are the most beautiful part of a plant. So flowers that are present on the plant are not only to add beauty to the plant, in fact, they are the reproductive part of a plant. They are considered as the reproductive part of a plant. So for this reason, flowering plants are the most advanced category of the plant kingdom, which is known as the angiosperm, which are called as the angiosperms. Now, what are angiosperms? So, angiosperms, if you will hear, and if somebody asks you what angiosperms are, so basically, these are the plants that produce flowers. So, in some plants, you will find that they do not produce flowers. But in some plants, you will see that those plants are producing flowers. And also, they bear seeds in their fruits. They bear seeds in their fruits. Yes. So such kind of plants are considered as angiosperms, and that is why the flowering plants are called as angiosperms, which are quite an advanced category. So flowers that we see growing on a plant are basically the modified condensed reproductive shoot. So this is the technical term that we are using for the flowering plants as we are using it in the biology. So that is how we will define it as that flowers are modified condensed reproductive shoot. So earlier pteridophytes were only present and they only consisted leaves, as you can see in this image. So this image is of pteridophytes in which you can clearly see that they only consisted leaves. Now from these leaves, they only produced only spores. So such kind of plants, we are talking about pteridophytes, they had several nodes in which leaves were attached. For example, these are the leaves we are talking about. Yes, I'm drawing it. So these are the leaves, and these were the nodes from where the leaves were arising. These were the nodes. And the space between the two nodes was called as or is called as the internode. Yes. So this is where the leaves arise in case of pteridophytes we are talking about, or generally also the leaves arise from nodes only. Now, with evolution, these internodes that we see, they got reduced and these leaves got modified to become flower. This happened in the course of evolution. Yes, earlier there were pteridophytes in which you can only see the leaves growing, and with evolution you see that these internodes that we just talked about, they got reduced inside, or the space between the two nodes, it got reduced and the leaves got modified into the flower and formed angiosperms that we just studied about. Now, these angiosperms have androecium and gynosium as a unique feature. Now, what are androecium and gynosium? So that we are going to study in detail further in this topic only. So for now, we see that androecium in a flower, they have the male gametes. Yes, they have the male gametes in them. And whereas in gynosium, which is also present inside the flower, they have the female gametes in them. They have female gametes inside them. So in the flower, stamen is called as the male reproductive part. So this is the flower, this is China rose, or scientifically it is also called as hibiscus. So this is the China rose that we are talking about, and in this flower particularly, the stamen is called as the male reproductive system. Yes, whereas carpel is considered as the female reproductive part. Here carpel, I would like to label, carpel is present here, and on top of it you'll find stamen. This is the stamen. Yes, so this is the cross section of this China rose or hibiscus flower, in which you'll find that on top of the part of this whole system that you see in a flower that we are going to discuss further. So the topmost one is the stamen, that is the male reproductive part, and carpel is present at the base, which is called as the female reproductive part of a flower. So looking at the diversity of flowers that we see around the world, some flowers contain both male and female reproductive parts. As you can see in this image, that the same flower consists both male and female reproductive parts. Now such flowers are called as monoecious flowers, or they are also known as bisexual flowers. They are also called as bisexual flowers because they consist of both male and female reproductive parts, and the example of such plants are pea and China rose. Example is pea and China rose. Whereas some flowers possesses either the male, either a plant will have a male reproductive part, or that plant will have only female reproductive part. As you can see in this image, that a single plant has either the male reproductive part or the female reproductive part. Now such flowers are called as dioecious, or they are also known as unisexual flowers. They are also called as unisexual flowers or dioecious. Yes, so let me just once again revise it with you, that a plant which consists of both male and female reproductive part on the left side of your image, that flower is called as monoecious or bisexual flower, and the plants which has either, or I would say flower which has either male reproductive part or the female reproductive part, now that in that case that particular flower is called as dioecious or unisexual. And the example of dioecious or unisexual flowers are corn and cucumber. Now let us study the parts of the flower in a little more detail. So flowers, as you can see, is divided into 4 whorls. It is basically divided into 4 whorls. So I'll just write it here, 4 whorls. And now on your screen you can see 2 flowers. Yes, so I'll keep on juggling between these 2 flowers. From the left side, from the left of the flower, I'll explain the units which are there in the flowers, and from the right one I am going to explain the whorls. Yes, now looking at the right side of the flower, the pink flower, the 4 whorls I am going to label it as calyx is number 1, number 2 is corolla, number 3 we are going to discuss about androecium, and number 4 we are going to discuss about the gynosium. And the units which they have we are going to discuss from the left side of the flower, the yellow flower. Alright, so pay attention. Now let us start. So we will begin with the stalk first. Stalk is present at the base. As you can see, I am encircling it as a stalk. Yes, on the left side of the flower. Now this stalk is called as pedicel. So you don't have to get confused between stalk and pedicel because they are same. Stalk is also known as the pedicel. Now in the flowers where you will find stalk, now those flowers are called as pedicillate flowers, in which you will see the stalks present. It is known as the pedicillate flower. Now in some cases you will not find this stalk or pedicel present. Now in that case the flower will be called as the sessile flower which does not have stalk or pedicel. So it is a case in which the stalk is present, and this is the case in which the stalk or pedicel is not present. Done? Now moving on, just above the stalk you will find a thick fleshy structure. Now look at the left side of the image. Left side of the image I'm talking about the yellow flower. Just above the stalk you will see a thick fleshy structure which is called as receptacle, or another name of receptacle is the thalamus. It is called as the thalamus. Now from this image you can see clearly that the whole flower is placed on the thalamus. So it plays a very important function in holding the whole structure of flower on top of it. So we can also call it as the stage of the flower. Yes? Clear till now? Now let's come to the pink flower. Look at the pink flower. Now we are going to talk about the first whorl of the flower. First whorl, which is placed just above the thalamus or receptacle. Yes? And as you can see from its color that it is green in color. So we can say that calyx is green in color. As you can see it labeled as green. Yes? Now, if it is green in color means it can do photosynthesis, one function, and it is also the protector of the bud. When the flower is not grown, when it is in its bud form. So it is basically or generally protected by the calyx. And units. For the units where we have to see? For the units we have to see the yellow flower. So the units that we are going to see, the unit of calyx is called as sepals. Yes? So now we can say that collection of sepals are called as calyx. Yes? Collection of sepals are called as calyx. Clear till now? Now, moving on to the second whorl on the pink flower. The second whorl is called as corolla. And what is the unique feature you see in corolla? So you will find that corolla in this case is very colorful in both the flowers. On the left side, on the left of the flower it is of yellow color, and on the right side it is of pink color. So what is the function of these colors? So the function of corolla in this case, in these cases, in the cases of flowers, it is to attract the insects or the pollinators for the purpose of pollination. So from this we can guess that pollination happens because the insects are or the pollinators are attracted towards these flowers because of the color, beautiful colors that you see. So in the case of calyx, the first whorl, you will see that the color will always remain green. But in case of corolla, you will find that the color of corolla is different in different flowers. Now moving on to the third whorl, that is androecium. Yes? See on the pink flower, androecium. Yes? So it is a third whorl. Now it consists of bunch of stamen. It consists of bunch of stamen. Let me tell you very slowly instead. Look at the yellow flower in which stamen is labeled. I am encircling stamen in this case. Yes? Here we are talking about the third whorl. Right or not? Now, this third whorl consists of stamen which has anther. See where anther is labeled, bilobe structure, the two-lobe structure anther, and the stalk-like structure which is the filament. Yes? So stamen has anther and filament, and it is also considered as the male part of the flower. It is labeled as the male part of the flower. Yes? So we can say the collection of stamen is called as androecium, which is our third whorl. Now moving on to the fourth whorl, that is Gynosium, marked as number 4 on the right side, the pink flower. Did you see that? Where Gynosium is marked? Here. This is the Gynosium. Yes? Now it is the fourth whorl, which consists of, since we are talking about its units, so we will look at the yellow flower. Now it consists of stigma. Let me encircle it. Stigma, style and ovary. Now here is a very important function of stigma, style and ovary, because our male reproductive part is stamen and it contains pollens, which are the male gametes. So should I write down here that they have male gametes? Male gametes. Yes. Now what happens is, the stigma is the first part. This is the stigma, which I am also drawing on top of the picture. So this is the stigma. So what happens is, when the pollen grains release or get released from this anther, so these pollen grains land on stigma. Meaning, why? Because stigma has a very sticky surface. Alright. Now coming to the style, which is again a stalk-like structure which is present just below the stigma. Now, what is the function of style? So what it does is, the pollen grains which fall on the stigma, it leads it towards the ovary. Got it? It leads it toward the ovary, which is our third part in the pistil, which is the third part basically. So now we know that stigma, style and ovary in this case are the carpels. They are known as the carpels or pistil. Now the collection of carpels are called as Gynosium. The collection of carpels are called as the Gynosium. Got it? So we just studied about the 4 whorls and their units. Now let us quickly revise it, that a flower has 4 whorls: calyx, corolla, androecium and gynosium. When you see calyx, inside calyx we have units of sepal, units of sepals, which is green in color. Yes. And corolla is colorful, which has units of petal. Yes. And in androecium, they have units of stamen. Units of stamen, which is further divided into, listen carefully, which is further divided into anther and filament. Yes. And in case of gynosium, it has units of carpels. Yes. Which is further divided into stigma, style and ovary. Yes. So these were the parts of flowers that we just studied, which is a very important topic. So if you are having notebook or pen with you, so you must note all the important points that we just discussed here. Now let us quickly revise the functions of parts of a flower, which I have for you in a notes form. Yes. So let us begin with the petals. Now number 1 is the petal. It is often large and it is generally colorful, as we have discussed, to attract insects. So I am encircling petals here in this image. Next is the sepals. Now sepals is green in colors, as we have discussed. I am encircling sepals also. It helps in protecting the flowers while they are in the buds. Next is the stalk. Now stalk is present somewhere here. I am just labeling it. Now the function of stalk is to support the flowers, to make it easily seen by the insects or to withstand the wind. Now next is the stamen. Now, stamen is considered as the male reproductive part, as we have just discussed, and it is made up of anther and filament. So, if you remember that I have told you that anther and filament makes the stamen. Now, inside the stamen or the parts of a stamen, first one is the anther. Now, inside the anther, pollen grains are formed, which contains the male sex cells. Now, coming to the filament, as you can see in this image. Now, filament, it supports the anther. As you can see that the anther is placed just above the filament. Yes. Next is the carpel. Now, carpel had what? It is the female reproductive part of a flower, first of all, and it contained stigma, style, and ovary. Now, these three made the carpel. Now, coming to the stigma first. Stigma is the topmost part of the carpel, which is sticky in nature, as we have discussed, through which the pollen tube grows. Now, what happens is, when the pollen grain falls on it, it protrudes a tube-like structure which goes straight in the ovary. So now this is called as the pollen tube. Yes. So yes, the function of style next. The style is present just below the stigma. Now this links the stigma to the ovary, which is the end part of the carpel, through which the pollen tube is growing, as you can see where I have drawn it. Now the last part is the ovary. Now, ovary contains ovules. Ovary contains ovules which develops into seeds when it is fertilized. So now you know that it is the site of fertilization. It is a site of fertilization between the pollen grains and the ovule which is present in the ovary. Yes. So yes, this was about the functions of particular parts of a flower that we just studied. Next are the functions of flower. We are now going to talk about the functions of a whole flower. So it helps in the modification of shoot to perform functions of sexual reproduction, as we have seen that the fertilization or reproduction, the sexual reproduction between male and female gametes takes place inside the flower. Also, flowers of most angiosperms are shaped variously to help diverse mode of pollination, because the shape of these flowers is different in different plants, so the mode of pollination is different in different plants as well. Next are the petals of the flowers. Because petals are very colorful in different plants and in different colors, so the function of petals is to attract bees and other pollinators. Now, they also provide seed for germination of pollens into the pollen tube, as we have seen. Also, they give site for development of pollen tube, formation of gametes, and lastly, the fertilization which takes place in the ovary. Next is the ovary part of the carpel is transformed into a fruit, which is a very important point, and the ovule present in them develops into the seed, and from seeds you know that a new plant can be grown. Let us now try solving a question based on the topics that we just covered. So the question says, can you name two parts in a flower in which the two most important units of sexual reproduction develop? So according to what we have studied, first one are the stamen, and stamen, as we know, are the male reproductive part of flower. Male reproductive part. And second one is the carpel, and carpel is the female reproductive part. Now let me draw the pictures of stamen and carpel for the better knowledge of these two structures. Now this is the structure of stamen, and also they are divided into two parts. The upper bilobe structure is called as anther, and the just below the part anther is the filament on which anther is placed. Now, if I'll draw the structure of carpel, it looks like this, and it is also divided into three parts, which is stigma, style, and ovary. Now, we also studied that the sexual reproduction in case of flowers, it takes place inside the ovary. So I can write down that reproduction takes place in this region of flower. So yes, this was all about this topic. I hope you understood about the flower, its various parts and their functions. Now you can go to EduRev and attempt the respective tests to understand this chapter in depth. You can also unlock all the logged videos, documents and tests of class 12th with EduRev Infinity Plan and ace your exams at less than 80 rupees per month. Thank you.